Hello and welcome everybody to today's very special session that we are recording. When I say we, I'm Dagmar Bryant. I'm here today with Jackie Young and we are talking about a meeting of the minds. Jackie and I met a couple of months ago online. We had this amazing connection and I get goosebumps as I say that. And we are going to talk about the way that we help other people and how we've realized that there's this beautiful connection with the work that we both do and how we both come together to help others connect with the divine. So, Jackie, I'd love you to share a little bit about how you do that with your clients.
Absolutely. I am so thrilled to be here with you, Dagmar. As you said, we just had this immediate connection, and it's just fabulous to have this time together. So, my background is actually as a hypnotist. I'm a master trained hypnotist. I have my own school of hypnotherapy or hypnosis. And that's really the work that I do in terms of healing through hypnosis as an overbroad statement.
Beautiful. I guess it's my turn then. So if I talk about the work that I do, so I do work with clients one-to-one in terms of coaching or providing readings, but I also have the Angelic Footprints podcast, which is the aim of really helping people to connect into that spiritual side of themselves, whether they may have forgotten or it's buried or they've just become too busy. And I think we would agree, both of us, that it's such a crazy time at the moment that people need connection, whatever that means for them. Would you agree with that?
100%. I mean, I think what everyone is feeling right now, we feel, especially after COVID, which brought a lot of attention to this feeling, is a sense of isolation and loneliness, is the thing that I hear often. And to recognize that you're never truly alone is really quite impactful and profound for people. So I think that that's one of the connectors that we have for sure. Why don't you tell people, Dagmar, how you got into the work that you're doing right now? Because I think it's a fascinating story.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll have to take you back quite a few years ago. I think for me, one of the things about the spiritual side of me is that it was always a part of me. And I guess I would say I never separated that from myself. Like the experiences that I had as a child or as a teenager, they just seemed normal. And it wasn't until I became more adult, if you like, went out into the workforce that I realized, oh, maybe that's not so normal. And when I say normal, well, for me, having my intuition was normal. I always knew things, right? Either knew things about people, whether I was going to like them, whether I was going to be friends with them or connect with them. Sometimes even knew things that would happen in advance, like having that precognitive experience, having that floating above the bed experience. So all of those things led me to, I think, ultimately really wanting to do this work for others. But like so many people, I went on a journey of, going to school as you do, then, going to work as you do. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I really brought this skill out because, believe it or not, I was studying in law school. And my friend Anna at the time, she said to me, Dagmar, would you like to learn the tarot? And I'm going, oh, yeah, this is bad and all that kind of stuff. And she said, no, it's not all bad. And believe it or not, my law school buddy was the one who actually helped me get into tarot. And that was like the opening of this door. And all of a sudden, it was like from what was a little trickle of a gentle stream became like a waterfall. But I did have this amazing experience when I was 21. I was actually hit by a car when I was walking along the road, crossing the road, should I say. I was a pedestrian. And I did my, look left, look right, and all of this thing. But the car that hit me from what I thought was well, it was actually an open road, but I thought this road was still closed, and it just hit me and bang, and you know luckily, no, I wasn't hurt, no broken bones, no nothing, and I got catapulted to the other side of the road, and within a minute there was a doctor and two nurses on the scene. But it was really quite amazing, and everyone said to me, your guardian angel looked after you that day. And I do. I absolutely believe that. And in my life, I've had so many discussions with the angelic team and my spirit team. And that's really a gift that everybody has. I don't want you to think that you don't have it. Jackie, you have it as well. And I'm sure that you know that you have it. But it's all of these experiences together that have made me who I am and that have wanted me to really push this out and really help others to be able to connect with their divine selves and the spirit connection as well. So, Jackie, that's me. Tell us a little bit about your history and how you've come to be who you are and how you've take two, how you've come to helping people.
It's completely different, actually. I was never brought up religiously, although, pardon me, there was talk of God in the family, but I didn't have a real essence of what that actually meant. And it didn't really bother me throughout my life whatsoever. In fact, what I saw sometimes being done in the name of religion with a capital R, I found quite bothersome, obviously. Um, so I just went through school and then I became a teacher, then I became a principal, a superintendent, and I ended my career as a director. So in Ontario, that means that I was overseeing an entire school board. And I had a fantastic career all the way through. I was heavily into special education. I worked an awful lot with parents as advocates in terms of navigating a school system and what that meant. And I really just found that I was always working with people of the highest caliber. When I was a principal, I felt like I was at the most amazing school. It was about 65 people on staff, 1,000 kids. It was a really large elementary school, a K-8. And I mean, everything felt like we were just on fire, like we were just cooking with gas all the time. So I felt very blessed in my career. Not that there weren't things that were, troublesome or challenging cases or challenging situations, but that's just part of any career. And they became, of course, nuggets for learning. So that was always lovely to kind of do a bit of an autopsy and figure out what went right, what went wrong. My last situation, for a number of things, did not end well for me. So my own body, and it doesn't really matter what the circumstances are because they happen to lots and lots of people. And I think that that's worth noting also. But my own body started becoming highly dysregulated. So I was nauseous all the time. I had a gut feeling of being sick all the time. I was hospitalized for vertigo at one point. I had pneumonia, ongoing pneumonia. So my body was really, really contrasting for what it was the work that I was trying to do, which is quite heavy work. However, the situation that I was in felt very combative and non-supportive. So whereas before we had had, 3 fantastic years of really just setting the world on fire as an entire board and doing lots of great work, for a variety of reasons, that relationship kind of soured. And again, it doesn't matter the why and the wheres, because what I realized is that now, from this point of view in my 60s, I needed that sense of dysregulation and sense of like what happened to my body to really understand the mind body connection. Because I thought that I was, still kind of doing my best. And I was certainly doing my best in a challenging situation. But when I look back with the grace of time, I recognize that I was really, really challenged by the ability to almost put one foot in front of the other. It was that bad. And I remember saying to a coworker, I feel like it's death by 1,000 cuts. Like I really couldn't figure out how to move through things with a sense of who I used to be. And I had considered myself to be very, very resilient up until that point. So it really felt like my body was betraying me. And I knew at some level that I was not working at my best. And so I left that situation. And it was because my doctor actually said, you cannot go back to work there. If she hadn't said that, I don't know that I would have left, because leaving like that felt like a disgrace. It felt like a failure. And the one thing that I always prided myself on being was resolute, resilient, and not a failure. So that was a real kind of comeuppance for me to really wrap my head around. Well, what does this mean for me in my psyche, in my ego, in terms of who I've always felt I was? COVID hit very close to that. I mean, I went on to another job, which was quite lovely, and we worked through COVID. Um, But then what I realized is that I needed to take some time to really figure out what had happened to me. And because of my work with brain research, because of my special education background, I really dug deep into how the brain organizes itself, what happens in the brain, et cetera. And quite interestingly, the more rabbit holes that I went down, particularly when I started looking at the mind body connection, the more all of my past took me to hypnosis, which really was interesting to me, not where I ever would have thought I would end up. I was also a neural practitioner, so I had taken a number of courses in terms of understanding how the actual brain works. So then to understand how the mind works alongside the brain was very explosive for me. And I know I'm taking too long here, so I'm going to wrap up a little bit. It all makes sense though. It's probably important. Um, and what I realized is that in doing my reading and doing my research, I came up with a course that's called the Mind, Body, and Spirit Coherence Blueprint. Because when you're out of coherence, when you're out of alignment, when you're trying to live a lie, there's always going to be leakage, is one of the things that I say. And in my case, my leakage was through my body. My body was saying, you can't sustain this anymore. Ergo, I'm going to make you sick. I became quite spiritual. I had always considered myself spiritual, but I didn't really recognize what that meant until I got into hypnosis and I started seeing how the work that I was doing could help with healing, number one, but also help with that sense of, as you said, divineness, divinity, and recognizing that there is profound sense of how when we understand how the unconscious mind works to protect us, that we can really figure out how to move through all the different parts of ourselves and to explore what that really means because we've all got different parts to ourselves. You're a mother, you're a daughter, you're a wife, you're a worker, you're a principal, whatever it is. And sometimes people have to flip hats very quickly and assume a different persona. Other times people have the same persona, but they just kind of flip the flavor, whatever it is. But one of the things I want people to understand more than anything else, and my own brand is all about education. So I base things very much on science and empowerment. So I want for you to leave feeling lighter and feeling heard, feeling seen, and feeling very, very empowered. When you recognize that that can be done by understanding the power of your unconscious mind, that is really life changing. And I know the work that you do is quite life changing and profound also. So, I mean, for all of those listening, that's one of the things that really drew us to each other in terms of, oh my gosh, we're coming at it a different way. But this meeting of the minds makes so much sense in terms of people understanding, there's one more than one way to skin a cat, if you will.
Oh, Jackie, I'm so hearing everything that you're saying, and it's absolutely in alignment with how I feel about it as well. And you talked about people not feeling right within themselves, using your intuition. People call it using your gut, they don't always say being psychic, but ultimately it is using your sixth sense. And
Mm-hmm.
we do need to listen to our body. And I guess that brings us to the section that we were going to talk about, about unlocking that inner wisdom. You can absolutely do that yourself, and you can come to someone like Jackie or to me, and we can help you with that. I think one of the most important things is, though, listening to our body. And I love how you shared that story about how your body was making you physically unwell. And I'm a firm believer that we have a mind, body, and spirit. And, if one aspect of one of those bodies, whether it's our mental body, our emotional body, our physical body, or our spiritual body, if something is off in one of those areas, it affects the rest of us. And that's where we can really become quite ill in
Mm-hmm.
one of our bodies. Please, what would you add to that?
It's very funny. I had a client the other day who, in talking to the body, basically what we uncovered was the body was saying, "You've got to slow down," and this was the only way that I could get you to slow down because you're running yourself ragged, and I need for you to pay attention. Ergo, I'm making you sick, and that was an actual conversation that happened. And that's kind of the beauty of the work that I can do is that you can talk to different parts of what's going on within your psyche, within your body. So to have your own sense of self give you that feedback is pretty important. And I find that most people don't dismiss it because it's a very interesting connection that they're not able to usually find. What I love about what you said is that we all have this ability, and yet there's such a cacophony of noise surrounding us, and now we're even worse at just trying to fill that noise. I mean, you hear about death scrolling all the time,
Yes.
and raise your hand if you can do it for hours. I certainly can't. But what I recognize, and one of the things that I say to my clients all the time, is that number one, you have to get comfortable with sitting with yourself. I'm not talking about meditation. I mean, you have to actually be able to enter a room and just be silent in that
Yeah.
room. And if you have a sense of discomfort with that, then pay attention to that because there's something to uncover there. There's something that needs to be uncovered there because you should be able to sit with, oh, I just wonder where my thoughts are going to take me right now. And that can be really, really profound in terms of, oh, isn't that interesting that my thoughts just went there as I was unpacking the groceries or dropping my keys in the drawer or whatever it is that you do without thinking. So when you're on automatic pilot, if you can take that time to simply be still with yourself, even as you're going through the routine, then it's really interesting the thoughts that can come up for you and bubble with you. What are your thoughts on that?
I would totally agree. Oh, I would add one other thought to that, and is that my experience with some of the clients and people that I've worked with is quite different in the sense of a lot of the time people aren't listening to that inner voice. I remember talking to a mentor of mine not very long ago, and he was actually very sick and working in the environment that he was working in. He ended up leaving, and he said when he left, when he resigned, it was like this breath of fresh air. And yet I had said to him at the beginning of this year, back in January, he only just recently resigned within 2 or 3 months ago. So back in January, I had said to him, you do know that being in that environment is what is making you sick. And he
Mhm.
didn't, and sometimes we don't want to acknowledge it at the time. And it wasn't until he resigned that he had that aha, oh, I see. And unfortunately, I do feel like that there are a lot of people who are still in that trap. And I get it because we're in that very difficult situation at the moment with what's going on in the economy, with the job sector, with people with the cost of living. So they might not be able to quit their jobs and just
Right.
leave. But then I would suggest, if that's the case for you who are out there who are listening, then perhaps find another way of tuning, as Jackie says, into that quiet space and give yourself that balance. And balance is one of those beautiful words that I believe that is not just a word. We all need balance. If we can't have it in our work life, then what is it that you are doing to offset that in your quiet time, in your downtime, in the time that you have to yourself? And I know some people don't have that. Would you agree? Some people just don't make time for themselves, but there needs to be that balance, right?
Yeah, I think you've captured something very, very important for people to hear because we aren't saying, well, just quit your job.
Yeah,
That's not a possibility, but you do have to find your way through small joys and small happinesses because if you don't, the alternative is quite deadly. And I don't use that term lightly, but I mean, it will take you down a different rabbit hole of addiction or finding little dopamine hits that you think are what your life is going to be about. And the work that I do, and I know the work that you do also, Dagmar, is more about trying to find that plumb line of joyfulness. And I often go back to, well, what was it as a child that brought you joy? And, like people will automatically just light up when they think about it. Oh, being on my bike and just going down a hill, that sense of exhilaration. And to recognize that as an adult, you have lots and lots of things that are burying you or feel like they're burying you. And we need to find a scrappy way to kind of say, no, no, I'm going to carve out 10 minutes or 15 minutes or half an hour to do something that literally brings me joy. It was
yeah,
curious to me because I realized that I hadn't read a book for pleasure in years when this was happening. And I thought, I was an avid reader of fiction. Like, I don't know when I dropped that. But it was an interesting situation to come across. And another thing, I remember at one point I was sitting with my cat and my dog, and both were on top of me, and I was trying to pet them both and scroll on my phone. And I thought, put the damn phone down and be in the moment of this immense love and feel gratitude for these little Dickens that are on top of you that are just wanting to connect. So that sense of connection, I think, is something that is very much lacking in a lot of people. And then we find ways to kind of move parallel through our worlds with people that we're living with, either partners or our children. And then we can sometimes overschedule ourselves and those we live with. And so you realize that you're kind of in a rat race of your own making, that you've chosen to not find any time to just be silent and be still, even if it means like literally sitting in the car and literally noticing what's going around you for 5 minutes. Like that ability to simply be still and to take some really deep breaths and to breathe out really hard makes a difference in how grounded you can feel in your own body. And that disconnect of not knowing where you are in your body, like that's why grounding is taking off so much now. That's why somatic breathing is taking off so much now. People are trying to find ways to reconnect. Walking in nature, like you hear all the same things over and over again because they do make sense. And instead, we've busied ourselves through scrolling and through Netflix and all the things that become our distractions, as opposed to, wait a minute, I really want to understand more about me and what my thoughts are all about because I'm pretty damn cool. Like I really, I owe it to myself to take this time to figure out what I want and who I wish to be, and then therefore make different decisions about how I want to live my life. And here's another big term, not feel victimized by my own life, not feel victimized by my own sense of scheduling or what I have chosen to think is a life well led. If you're not happy with where the choices have led you, then you need to kind of figure out a way, okay, what needs to keep, i.e. the job. I have to have, my sense of that. But what can I let go? Do the kids need to be in 5 different events? Do they love it? Do I love them being in it? Or is it just something that I felt was important? And if it is, that's great. But take the time to be responsive, not reactive in your thinking.
Yeah,
What do you think
well
about that
put.
kind of stuff?
Jackie, very well put. And so many thoughts come into my mind as you've said all of that. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how do I even want to respond to that? Let me start with by saying you talked about overscheduling our time and we get caught up in this rat race. And one of the things that I say to my clients is make a point of scheduling time for yourself. We have a diary for going to work, for going to the dentist, for the doctor, for this, for that, for dropping the kids off at school and everything. Well, how about you also schedule time for yourself? And I had a client a little while ago, and it happened to be a gentleman who was a very high level executive and who said, I schedule time between 12 and 1 for my lunch break, but my secretary then goes and puts meetings in. And I'm going, hold on a sec, we need to put some boundaries up there because there's a reason why you've scheduled that time. You don't have to tell people what the time is for. In case, if you're worried, oh, well, what happens if they think, oh, I'm having some me time? Am I just being selfish? You are allowed to be selfish. You are so important for not only yourself, but also for the people around you. And the perspective that I give to people is if you were not around or if you weren't well, well, then what would happen to your
Yeah.
kids, to your partner, to your pets, those beautiful family members who do rely on you? So it's actually your duty, I would suggest it's your duty to look after yourself. And there's a reason why when you're in an aeroplane, they say, put that oxygen mask on first on yourself, right? And then help other people. And I think in those times of busyness, people Forget that. So I'm going to make it a big message for you listening today to say to you, plan some me time in your diary and be unapologetic about it.
Mm.
This is my time, and set up those boundaries. What would you suggest, Jackie?
Yeah, the word selfish is very interesting to me because it has so much connotation to it. And what I want for people to replace it with is self-preservation, because there is such a different connotation. And that's truly what it is. I mean, like, you are self-preserving yourself and your sense of what it means to be you and be your best version of you. So, however, you need to carve out that time. I couldn't agree more. And I remember hearing, and I don't even know what European country it was, but it was profound enough for me to remember it, that in this particular country, people would say to each other, well, what's your hobby? And it was an understanding that everyone had a hobby,
Mm,
regardless of what that was, whether it was, oh, I'm a garden aficionado, or I ride my bike every night after work, or, like, I paint, I do watercolors, whatever. But the idea of having a hobby by which you found joy and put time was just part of the culture. And I know your culture is very much like my culture. And if I said to someone, what's your hobby? They would look at me as if I'd grown a second head. It's not it's not a word that we use. And I thought there's something very profound about that. It's almost as if we have to apologize for thinking, I'm going to carve out time for myself to do this. And instead, what do people do? They start gaming, and calling that a hobby when it becomes actually a lifestyle or something. So again, the idea of a hobby is something that brings you joy, like innate joy, like going back to that exhilaration of flying down a street on your bike, if you will. And that's, I think, what we're trying to recapture in all these other ways, these small dopamine hits that we talk about all of the time. One thing I want to share with our listeners is, because it's a really easy way to kind of tap into this stuff, realize and don't be surprised anymore that when you are doing something repetitive that does not require cognitive thought, like brushing your teeth or being in the shower, washing your hair, gardening, something very, very repetitive, that's when you get downloads of creativity.
yes.
And that's not by design. So when you are trying to grind to find an answer, like if you're having a conversation with a girlfriend and you think, what was the name of that actor? Oh my gosh, I can see him plain as day. He was in all these other movies. And then you go home and you brush your teeth at night and say, oh, Kevin Costner, that's who it was, for goodness sake. It comes to you because you're not grinding to try to figure out, like, really using your conscious mind. When you start going into the powers of the unconscious mind, that's when you drop from beta into alpha. And in that brainwave state, you automatically start accessing your creativity. And so don't be surprised anymore when you kind of go, oh, that's why I get these magnificent downloads as I'm going to sleep, or when I'm waking up, or as I'm doing something that doesn't require me to think. That's why you can have highway hypnosis when you're driving home and you think, how the hell did I get here? I drove up into my driveway and I have no recollection of getting here. It's allowing your brain to do what it needs to do, which is to relax. So again, like, coming back full circle to, if you're grinding your way through your life, recognize that you are going to, at some point, have to pay the piper. The piper is going to be that you're either going to be sick, you're going to have a mental breakdown of some kind. Your family is going to recognize that you're not there for them in the right way. Like that whole idea of, kicking the dog and taking out um, your frustrations in ways that are not healthy, or you recognize that you're actually drinking too much or vaping too much, or you're, addicted to porn. Or here's one that's interesting: you're flirting too much at work. You're in dangerous territory because you're trying to get hits of functional dopamine in ways that are not at all healthy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's interesting, and thank you for picking me up on the terminology, selfish versus self-preservation. It has a totally different sound, and that is something that I am actually very mindful of as
Yeah.
well. When I hear people talking about themselves negatively or talking about a situation negatively, and I do want to just touch very briefly on the words that we use and the negative situations that we can find ourselves in. So we've already talked about, a colleague that I was talking about who was becoming quite sick. So we can have toxic situations, whether that's a work situation, it might be a relationship, it might be a person around us who that they're just not very positive. And I do think we have to be very mindful of who we have in our circle. And we can't always get rid of that person. We might not even want to, but maybe what we also need to do is limit our exposure or the amount of time we spend with that person. And notice also the kind of language that we use or that other people around us use. And I was in Australia. I think I told you I'm from Australia, but for most of you, if you didn't know, I was from Australia and now live in the UK. But one of my very closest friends from high school, he was, when I saw him last time, he was talking a lot about his illnesses. Like, I've got to take a tablet for this and a tablet for that and a tablet for something else. And I'm thinking to myself, you're actually sounding really old. You're aging yourself by the
Yes.
way that you speak. And he said, well, it's because of the amount of time I spend with older people, like my parents, my grandparents, and, extended family. And so he's kind of adopted that language. And I had to say, look, are you aware of the language that you are using and the effect that is having on you? So again, for our listeners, I would also say, just start being more conscious, as Jackie says, start becoming more aware of the kind of language that you're using and the potential negativity that is occurring around you. And you might not even be aware of it, but it's so easy for that negativity to pull you down. So how do we get out of that? You can change your vibration. As Jackie said, do hobbies, do the things that you love. For me, one of my daughters put me onto diamond painting. Have you seen those diamond painting kits? Oh, go check out diamond painting. They've got these little, I can't even remember what the name of it is, but they've these tiny little pieces and you stick them onto a picture and you get this beautiful picture that comes out of it. So that's my hobby at the moment, and it brings me such a lot of joy. So ask yourself, what is it about negativity that could be bringing you down and ultimately distracting you or taking you away from where that you want to be?
Yeah, I think that you've hit on something that's really important to pull apart. The idea of how we like to identify ourselves also is pretty interesting because for an awful lot of people, they do start to identify themselves through their sickness or through
Yes.
their storyline of sickness because we talk about secondary gain in hypnosis. Why is it that someone's holding on to a behavior or a way of thinking that doesn't do them any good? And it's because the secondary gain, i.e., I'm getting attention from the family, is really what they are afraid of losing. So if I make myself well, or if I talk about being well, then is my family still going to give me the attention that I'm used to getting, even though it's negative attention and they don't really want to be around me? So to try to figure out how to break those cycles is challenging. It's very, very challenging work. And that's when I would say you really do want to work alongside someone like myself or like Dagmar or a therapist of some kind. Because if your identification of self is based on negative stuff, then you are for sure going to shorten your lifespan. There's no getting around it. The body doesn't want to sustain being unhealthy. It simply doesn't. It was made to be healthy. It was made to slough off all the cells and continue to grow new cells, including in the brain. Like we know that now. So understand that you're meant for growth. You're not meant for, just kind of allowing everything to dissipate and solidify and slough off in a bad way. That sloughing off is new growth. It's regeneration, and that's the way that you really want to be able to think of things. And even just using language like that is very, very interesting because you can't think about regeneration without kind of perking up a little bit. as opposed to, oh my gosh, I've got all of these pills lined up and my body is failing me. And it's like, no, no, hang on. Let's flip the script on this a little bit. I'm lucky enough to live in a society whereby I am able to get the help that I need. And if it's through Western medicine and I'm doing it, through um, a group of pills that I know that my doctor has prescribed, and I've got a great relationship with my doctor, then I know I'm on my way to good health and we are managing situations. The language is completely different, and yet it's the
Isn't it?
exact same scenario. But one is powerful and empowering, and the other, again, like I keep coming back to this language for a reason. The other is quite victim centered, and that's not where you want to be. That the frequency of being victim centered is very, very challenging to get out of, but it is necessary to live a life of fulfillment, quite frankly.
Yeah, I love how you put that, and you talked about that kind of mentality. And when we talk about being unhealthy, but the word disease comes from dis-ease, right? There's
That's right.
something in your body that's saying, hold on a sec, this is not right. And you talked about pills and the way that we talk about language. I mean, my husband calls my medicine cabinet, well, it's not really my medicine cabinet, it's all my vitamins. In actual fact, he calls that my pharmacy, but that is my pharmacy because I believe that that's helping me stay healthier for longer, because I do want to have that good quality of life, and I'm very, very mindful of that. And one of the things is, how do we do that? How do we capture that for ourselves? I absolutely love what we've covered here today, Jackie. And I love the word empowerment. It's my word as well. You've said it a few times, and I keep meaning to say it. I love that feeling of being empowered, because we're taking back our strength. We're
That's
taking
right.
back the reins. In the tarot, in actual fact, it's the card of the chariot. We're taking the reins of the horse and steering ourselves forward in the direction that we want. So my message to you all out there is, ask yourself, where are you steering your chariot? Which direction do you want to go in? Because the decision that you make today affects the life that you are going to have tomorrow, next month, the month after that. And sometimes it takes a while for things to come about, but remember,
Yeah.
all of your decisions, hopefully for you, will be empowering so that you can live your best life.
Yeah, that's really beautifully said. I love the way that you said that. One of the things I want to ask you, Dagmar, is do you want to talk a little bit more about the work that you do that is helping people through their healing journeys?
Well, thank you, Jackie. I would say for me, it's about connecting into, whether it's the angels, or the spirit world. I help people with my intuition and connecting into the divine. That's how I help people, whether I'm giving them a reading or whether I'm giving them coaching. There's always an aspect of inspiration with the work that I do. And I trust very much that I'm very clairaudient, you see, so I hear spirit very clearly. It's like I'm having a conversation with you. I can hear them in my ear saying, "Oh, well, this is going on with this person," which used to freak my husband out because he says to me, "Oh, you know things that you shouldn't know," right? But he's got used to that now. But it's still interesting because it means that I can give people profound messages that really help them escalate their life and really move their life forward in a profound way. And sometimes it's not about telling people what to do, it's
Right.
giving them the tools to be able to do it themselves. You know that saying about give someone a fish or teach them how to fish, the difference
Right.
between how they can do it for themselves. So for me, it is about empowerment, helping you set boundaries, giving you those tools to be resilient and make the best decisions for yourself at that point of in time, so that
Mm.
down the track you can be exactly where you want to be, having taken those steps to get to that destination. Jackie, how would you say that you help people?
It's very interesting to me how our work is so different and yet parallel and actually dovetail. I mean, it's not parallel when it actually dovetails together. So they're an intersecting arc, if you will. Um, what I love about this is again coming back full circle to the idea that there is a meeting of the minds, and however you understand that there is a divinity, and I don't mean a religious divinity because I know that that word can feel quite heavy for people. And if they're not religious, I don't want you to turn off the podcast or the listening by any means, because the sense of divinity is simply to recognize in the term that I use is like a divining rod. So the divining rod is, the little thing that you find water, find metal, or sometimes, speaking to spirits, whatever. The idea behind recognizing that you have a divine sense of yourself is not all that different from what you're talking about in the sense of the divine. And what we're both doing in slightly different ways is recognizing that people can deeply, deeply understand that they're never truly alone. And I think that that's something that is really necessary right now because, again, coming full circle from when we started, the sense of loneliness and isolation that people had that was really exacerbated and brought attention to through COVID hasn't left a lot of people. And the idea that you are part of a collective or that there is a part of your own body, mind, and spirit that is always with you. Oh, I'll give you an example. We talked about this a little bit in the pre-conversation. When I'm working with someone, one of the things that we'll do as we're ending the session is see if we can have a conversation with your highest self, whatever that means to you. So I do like to use the word your own sense of divinity. Um, and one of the things that the divine self always says to the client is, I've got you. I've always been here. I'm always with you. I'm so proud of what you're trying to do. It's like that parental figure that some of us might not have had, and that unconditional sense of, I belong here. I feel like I'm in, the bosom of my mother, or that love that I didn't really know that I could experience. And the work that both of us are doing is helping people find that sense of connectivity to otherworldliness or to themselves. But at the end of the trail, it's that you are cared for, you are seen, you are loved, you are understood. And once you know that there's ways to find those connections, then the world is truly your oyster, regardless of what your work situation is, regardless of the challenges that you have in your life. Because when you can find that internal peace, however you choose to find it, that's when you will realize that you can move through your life and everything else just kind of falls to the wayside. The noise of all the stuff that was causing you stress, literally, you can start seeing it fall to the wayside. It doesn't have the same power over you. And you get to choose what you're going to pay attention to, what's worthy of your energy, all that kind of really, like really important stuff. It's not necessarily mystical, but there's something quite magical about it.
That is so beautiful. And thank you for bringing us back to what we started with that connection to the divine or divinity. And I don't know how many times I've had guests on the show and we talk about angels, and it brings us back to how beautiful that connection is, knowing that you are never alone. So I
Mhm.
agree with you 100%. So whether you're connecting with Jackie to help you do that, or you're connecting with me or some other therapist, or even connecting into the divine by yourself, I hope for
Yes.
everyone out there that has been super helpful and a great starter and a great introduction to Jackie and to me. Jackie, would you like to tell everybody how they can get in touch with you?
Oh, absolutely. I do have a website. It is Open Minds Hypnosis, minds with an S, .ca, because I am in Canada. So openmindshypnosis.ca. Or you can use my moniker and you can email me at Jacqueline at themindshiftcoach.ca.
Thank you,
For
Jackie.
you, how do people get
Yeah,
in contact with you, Dagmar?
Well, there's a number of different ways. I am still on Facebook, so just check out Dagmar Bryant, same as on LinkedIn. But also do be sure to check out the Angelic Footprints podcast, which you can find on any of your favorite podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple, and it's also on YouTube. My email is on the bottom. You can connect with me in any way, but it's dagmarbryant@gmail.com. Keeping it simple. I love the keep it super prince.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. Keep it super simple philosophy. Jackie, it's been awesome. Any last thoughts that you would like to share with our viewers or listeners today?
One of the things, why don't we share with our listeners what we're planning to do next if we move forward that way?
Sounds great. Would you like to share with that?
Well, one of the things that Dagmar and I have realized is that with the help of ChatGPT, because why not, we do have a lot of intersecting points. And what we'd like to do is provide some opportunities for you to get in contact with us, maybe have an open Q&A session about the work that we do together or the work that is separate for the both of us, the way that we tackle work. But also we want to get together and provide some live streams for you all because, I mean, as you can clearly see, we have a connection and I think Dagmar would agree that we could talk forever
We
on a
could,
number of things.
absolutely.
And so we'd like to invite people into the conversation, the more the merrier, if you will, and just kind of allow for all of us to really explore what it is that the work is that we're doing. And again, like I do keep using the word profound, but I think it's really important because it is really quite profound work that we are tackling and that we are responsible for and responsive with or to.
Yeah, I agree. And yes, absolutely. Jackie and I want to have some lives. So if you would be kind enough to check out our socials, check out for the upcoming lives that we're going to be doing. We'll give you plenty of notice and give us questions that you have about the hypnotherapy, about the podcast, or anything that we've talked about today. Maybe share something that you've got going on in your life and maybe how can we even help you with the best way to move forward. So we'd absolutely welcome your questions and have you on the live with us.
Terrific. Dagmar, this has been so much fun. I can't thank you enough.
And you likewise. And thank you to everyone who is going to be listening or watching to this promo. We look forward to connecting with you. And until the next time, from Jackie and myself, blessings and may your life be filled with hope and inspiration.
Thank you. Okay. Ah, is it recording? Recording the class.